One big separation that society has is dividing people based on gender. It is visible through signs and advertising on various designated places targeted for a specific gender. For example, washrooms advertise that there are only two different types of gender that people can be identified by, which is male or female. With a genderless society, we are now able to stop seeing people as one or the other. Washrooms will become accessible and welcoming to all, in one unified place. Public signs will not discriminate anyone's belief or perception on who they are. Signs and advertising will become neutral and not portray a specific gender to identify people. Gender identity and expression of oneself will become a new universal logo.
The boundaries we have that constrict what people wear would disappear. Clothing wouldn't be a binary thing, either one or the other. Instead, fashion would merge these two binaries and become unified. There wouldn't be any limitations to what an individual could wear, and if it is approved of or not by the society around them. The division we have in stores between men and women would be gone, and stores could be divided by different colors, styles, and sizes. And we'd stop using clothing as a way to declare gender or sexual orientation. And the idea of fashion would be a form of exploring identities and finding what works for us as individuals. The idea of masculine clothes and feminine clothes wouldn't work anymore. We'd only have clothes.
Without gender, or the thought of gender, I think there would be no gender discrimination in jobs, no stereotypes for men or women, or opposing gender job roles. No more negativity on the norms of different job roles for men or women. There would also be no gender wage gap, or differences on the opinion. Jobs would be more concerned about the person, the look, the personality, and how qualified they are at the job, and not about the person's gender.
Now let's talk about gender and religion. I come from a Christian household, and my grandfather always talked about how the man should provide for the family, or how homosexual relationships are a sin because all the relationships in the Bible are specifically male and female. This made me think, is religion always formed along gender lines? Or can we find, or at least imagine, religion in which gender plays little or no role? And if religion is inevitably gendered, what does this tell us about the nature of religion? If there was no gender in religion, religious people will probably have a less rigid construct about gender roles in their lives. Now let's talk about gender in social media. The first thing that came into my mind when talking about gender in social media was Tinder. Tinder is probably the app that uses gender the most. You need to use your gender to find you a match. And you need to use your gender preference or the gender you're attracted to find people you're attracted to. However, what if there was no gender? Gender would be pointless in this scenario. For dating apps to work, the app would have to pose a series of very invasive and personal questions for it to be able to provide a match for the user. Not based on what gender you're attracted to, like we do now, but based on what kinds of people you're attracted to.
If gender didn't exist, in the context of sexuality, I think we would all be fluid. Instead of being attracted to characteristics that are defined by masculinity or femininity, I think our sexualities and desires would simply be based on the other person for everything except their gendered identity, their look, their personality, etc. That being said, though, the implications of one's biological sex would still exist. So how much of an effect would that still have? Intimacy is a separate concept to reproduction, but at the same time, is sex really biological, or is it just a construct of culture? Maybe science would still play a role in telling us what we're attracted to. It just wouldn't be based on societal conformities, but instead the purely physical thing. But then how would this translate to sex and reproduction? Perhaps instead of conforming to what we should be attracted to, and with the acceptance of each other's sexualities and relationships, maybe sex would merely be based on an openness and exploration. Maybe it wouldn't matter what went where, it would just be about the human connection. But then with less social pressure to procreate, what would happen to our population as a result? Would we turn to more adoption? Would our population actually decrease? Or would we actually need to find a way to create life outside of a woman's body? And then within this fluidity, would there still be hierarchies and judgment? because as beings, we seem to have this innate nature to judge and impose our ideas and beliefs among others. So then would this be pushed through a different outlet or somehow worked into a genderless society? I like to think that if anything, a genderless society would create more acceptance and love for one another. I think we would love people as they are and not how they're supposed to be.